Revelation 12:11. And they have conquered him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony. For they loved not their lives, even unto death.
The things that have been inflicted onto me, the things that I've inflicted onto myself, the Lord healed me completely.
All things, all beings submit to him. I could speak the name of Jesus and that evil would leave.
All I could feel was a peace and him say, "Not yet, daughter."
I called his name, and within a second, my breathing was restored and I could breathe normally again. I could not believe it.
And I saw Jesus interceding for me. And he said to me, "I've been protecting you from things you never even knew about."
Martyria. Welcome to episode 26, Kaylee's Martyria, wingtip to wingtip and shoulder to shoulder. No matter how bizarre life may become, God has a way of anchoring us to him. So join us now as we have natural talk about Kaylee's supernatural walk.
Well, I grew up in the Bible Belt, like small little country town. And not a lot of people have ever heard of this place, but it's called Whitwell. It's like on the other side of the mountain, kind of close to the Chattanooga area, you know. One of those little like one red light towns. There's nothing there but cows and like a couple of old gas stations that have been there since 1952, you know. And I grew up there mostly when when I was little. All of my family, as far as I was aware, I grew up Christian, you know, like lots of Baptists, lots of, you know, things like that. My dad, when I was younger, was not really super religious. He didn't really come with me and my mom to church or anything like that. He didn't start to really really follow Christ intensely until he got a lot older. My parents were rather young when they had me. They were in their early 20s. So, but my mom, she was always incredibly spiritual, incredibly Christian, just a woman of God. She always raised me to be careful what I put in my spirit. She always prayed over me. She always read the Bible with me. So, you know, I grew up really knowing Jesus, but a lot of my childhood was spent with Jesus. Like it felt when I look back to when I was little, it's very spiritual experiences. I had seizures growing up my whole life. I had my first seizure when I was 6 weeks old. So I was always in and out of the hospital. I was always having like seizures and episodes. I would have 6 seizures a day by the time I was a teenager. So a lot of it, I guess when those things happened, I was just always a lot of my childhood is consumed with memories and thoughts of angels and Jesus and kind of in a state of floating and not really on earth. I know that probably sounds it's difficult to explain something like that. And I didn't really click into, I guess, earthly reality until I was about 12 or 13 years old when my parents got divorced. And something just kind of shifted, and I was more part of the human realm at that point, I guess. So, and then growing up in the Bible Belt is a kind of different kind of religious behavior, I guess, to say that, you know, you grow up around a lot of racism, a lot of just, it's a little bit hateful. It's a little bit hateful, so it kind of leaves a bad taste in your mouth, you know, about what's going on. Once I clicked into that reality of what was going on in the world around me, and I'm like, I've spent the last 10 years with Jesus and his angels. This ain't it. You know, what's going on? And it kind of made a big shift. But I did grow up in a very, with an incredibly Christian mother that taught me all kinds of things. She had me reading the Bible since I was 3, 4 years old.
So when you say that you had seen angels in Jesus, are you talking about like in the way that your mom was kind of raising you, or are you talking about like literally having visions of angels in Jesus?
Yeah, like literally, I remember when I would lay down at night and go to sleep. Um, and I would be laying in my bed, and I had a really nice, we weren't, rich or anything, but we had a really nice home. And my mom kept everything really clean. And when I would spend time with my mom, I was in, reality, I guess is a word to use for it. But when I would lay down to go to sleep at night, I would see like, it came to form as a beautiful woman that kind of looked like my mother, but not my mother, if that makes any sense. Angels that would come to view with me and sort of in a way that I guess I would feel safe and not scared. They would sit with me. They would talk with me. A lot of things in my childhood were very just bright colors, sparkles, but just playing and just being with it's like there was just always the presence of Christ there and his angels all the time, that it's to a point that I don't remember much about the world. I would go into like, I guess just somewhere else. I was always somewhere else because my childhood surrounding me in the real world was not, it was a very toxic environment. I was growing up in the middle of a domestic violence situation and a lot of fighting and arguing, and my parents were really young and there was a lot of drama all the time, and I just disassociated from that. I suppose I was little, and I was always just in this realm of safety and happiness. And I always knew that it was Jesus because my mom taught me about Jesus,
Yeah. So are you able to describe not only the angels and Jesus, I am curious about that, but also like when you would you go somewhere to meet them, or would they come to you? Because I know you said kind of like your world was just kind of colors and these sorts of things. So was it like you felt like you were leaving your body, or did they come and visit you?
Kind of, they came to me. I do remember one time I was like flying over my house. I think I was about 6 or 7 years old and I was in the sky. I remember I used to tell my grandmother all the time, I would get angry because I wanted to find a way that I could fly again. I wanted to fly again, and I know I've done it before. I know I have. My family thought I was crazy, just a little kid being, a little kid, but I know I've done it before. And I looked down and I could see like the top of my house and like my yard. I could see my play set. Jesus, you can't see I never could see his eyes. His face was always kind of like just a bright glow, and you couldn't make out any details, but he was just like a shape of a man. And I could see, I didn't see the holes in his hands and feet until I was older. When I was little, it was just kind of, he was a glowing, just safe space. And it was more of always like I could see him, but it was more of a feeling, if that makes any sense. It's like two things can be true. It's kind of both at the same time. Because my seizures would always happen in moments of distress, when something bad was happening or something unsafe was happening around me. I would go into a seizure. And it was like my seizure symptoms would be things like I can smell colors. So it was like
Mm.
I can see feelings, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it doesn't make sense in a way that I've ever had that same experience, but I know like synesthesia is a phenomena that people have. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting, especially when people who have it get together and are like, well, what does red smell like to you? And what does, it's so interesting, or they'll have conversations about that. But yeah, no, I think that's very interesting. Did the angels or Jesus, when they visited you, did they ever say anything, or was it just kind of the presence?
Well, a lot of the times a lot of it is so much in hindsight, because it's so strange the way that God will um speak to you. He speaks to you in what works in that moment, and then it
Mm,
changes as you change and grow, and as he works with you and he
mm,
molds you and changes you. And I remember I would see a lot of I guess premonitions, I guess is not the word, prophecies. He would tell me things that were this is going to happen, but it's going to be okay. You're going to get older
mm,
and things are going to get like this, but it's going to be okay. I always had
mm,
his main focus with me was always enjoy being a child right now, because I feel like earthly me didn't really get to experience and enjoy a childhood, but my spirit and my soul did.
mm,
And he enjoy being little, be a kid right now. But when you get older, these things are going to happen, but I have a plan for you. And it was always just a knowing.
mm,
And other than that, they just were always there. My mom always prayed over me, surround her with your angels, wingtip to wingtip, shoulder to shoulder. And I say that in all of my prayers now. Keep her surrounded with your angels, wingtip to
mm,
wingtip, shoulder to shoulder. And it's that's what he did. They were just always there.
mm. So, I know that you started to get into at about the age of 12. Your parents went through a divorce, and then kind of the world started to finally come into fruition for you at that point. You weren't necessarily in the world of colors and sparkles anymore. What did that transition look like for you, and did that change your experiences with, seeing Jesus, seeing angels, having kind of these visions, or prophetic encounters?
It did. I think the all it was like all of the trauma and all of the things I had experienced and gone through from I kind of remember from 4 or 5 years old up until I was about 12 is when I was, in the other worlds, you know. And then about the time it was like I had to lock in. My mom was leaving my dad. We had to move. We had to pick up and leave my house. I was starting a new school. I was like, my whole world was changing. And I just kind of went into a state of like, I guess I disassociated from a lot of things, because I suddenly wasn't a very social child. Um, I maybe had two friends that were, and I had a drawing to people that were not kind to me and that were not really my friends.
Hmm.
Um, I started getting very easily influenced by the world. Um, I didn't find out until I had my son, but I was autistic. And so the way that I went about in the
Hmm.
world was just completely different from everybody else. And by the time I got to be, I guess, about 16 or 17 years old, I had been having seizures my whole life. Like it was constant. And everything got to be, my mom remarried. She remarried a man that was horrible to all of us. He was horrible to all of us. My dad and I were not having a good relationship. Him and my mom were constantly fighting. There was court. There's just all kinds of stuff going on. And then me having seizures. And I guess everything just piled onto my mom so much finally that she kind of broke. And I remember I was, I think, 16 or 17 years old. She comes into my room. I had just got out of the hospital. I had a seizure and fell down the stairs. And she comes into my room and she sits on my bed and she tells me that she doesn't believe in God anymore. And she said that I think if God is real, then he doesn't love me. And he doesn't care about it. She called him an a-hole. And she said, if God were real, he wouldn't have given me a sick daughter. And she didn't mean it in that, because my mom is my best friend. I love my mom, and we fixed our relationship now. And I understand now at 35, she was hurting. And she didn't mean it in the way of, I wish you weren't my daughter. She just meant it in the way, I wish my daughter wasn't sick. I wish that I could help you. I wish that I could help you get better. But I took it as, I'm a burden and I'm a problem. So that shifted something in me, and that was when I ended up turning to witchcraft. Witchcraft snuck its way in.
Yeah. What specifically drew you to witchcraft outside of, I don't know, any number of maybe things you could have run to, especially in the Bible Belt? I mean, I know it's called the Bible Belt. Obviously, that doesn't mean it's only, for Christians only or anything like that. There's a lot of witchcraft and things that are very pervasive in that area. But what was it specifically about witchcraft that drew you to that?
The need for control and changing I had a desperation to change my whole environment and change everything around me and have more control over it. And Satan shows up with a pretty package. He shows up with a pretty package. Look what I got for you. I can help you fix this. And it was like something in me had just been I became angry at God. And I thought to myself, you know what? My mom has a point. If God cares about me, then why am I going through all this? Why am I so sick? Why am I not getting any better? Why would God give me a mother that sees me as a burden? Like, I went through all kinds of things. And it wasn't something that just kind of shifted and happened overnight. It was something that just kind of kept coming up in my face. The devil was like, come here, like tempting me. I would see it on TV. I started hearing stories and things about people who would do spells to get what they wanted. And, I started learning about, it started off as paganism. It's just paganism. I'm worshiping nature. I'm participating in Mother Earth and nature, and it was innocent enough. And it just kind of grew and snowballed from there. And you go in it with the intentions that are good, positive intentions. I didn't have any intentions of like hurting anyone, putting hexes on people, doing black magic and dark stuff. I was just I want to heal my sicknesses. I want to, maybe if I get in touch with Mother Earth, I can help heal myself, heal other people. I want to fix and change my life. And I was deceived.
So when you started out kind of going down the path of paganism, the idea was to basically heal yourself, to kind of have a feeling of more control over your situation and whatever illness was causing you to have so many seizures, or if it's a disorder or whatever it is. Did you ultimately find any success in that? Did you find any peace in that?
At first, which I had always had that little voice in the back of my head that knew that this is wrong. Like I said before, like Jesus never left my side through the whole entire thing. He was right there. My mom's prayer over me, keep her surrounded with your angels, wingtip to wingtip, shoulder to shoulder. He made a promise to always, and he don't break promises. So that was always there. So it was kind of like, it kind of felt like God had a rope around my waist, and he was holding on to the other end of the rope, and then he let me go, do my thing. And he gave me room to grow and learn and figure it out for myself. But he kept me there ready to yank me back whenever it was time. And whenever he, I was ready, he was ready, because it's his time and not mine. And it started off with, because the devil's not going to, immediately start off hurting you. He's going to make you think he's your friend. And he's going to make you think that you're being successful in everything you're doing. So you keep doing it until you've gone so far deep into it. You turn around and you're like, what is this? You never read the fine print. He tricks you. He's a liar. There's no fine print to read. You don't know what he's going to do. So I did money spells. I did, my seizures never stopped, by the way, through that whole thing. But I did money spells. I would get tons of money. I was about 22 and I did a love spell to call in my husband or my partner. Met my now ex-husband and married him. He came into my life almost immediately after that. Got my own apartment, got a new car, was just, in spell books and going and getting, I went to McKay's bookstore to get some spell books because it very quickly escalated from just paganism to full-blown witchcraft. And there was a big book of Archangel Michael and a big Bible, like right in the way, on the bookshelf. And I had gone into the aisle to look for stuff, and there was one man. The entire aisle was empty. If I could go back and find this man and apologize to him, I would. I think about him every day. It's like he was standing there waiting for me specifically. The whole aisle is empty except for this man standing there. And I go and I don't pay him any mind. I go start looking at the witchcraft books. And he stops me and starts asking me what I'm doing there. Why are you here? I immediately got offended and got angry. Who are you? What is it in your business? By this point in time, I guess I was about 19 years old. The anger started setting in. The deeper I got into witchcraft, the more angry I started getting. But I didn't realize that I was turning into that person. And he started going on about, he said, all of this stuff is not going to do anything for you. You need to turn to Jesus. You need to go back to Jesus. It was like he knew me, but I got offended and I got angry and told him to mind his own business, yelled at him, told him he don't know me. He don't know my life. He don't understand. And he said, it's okay. He said, I'm praying for you. I understand. He said, know that I love you. My sister in Christ, I love you, and you're going to be okay. I understand. And he turned around and he left me alone. And I ended up buying a whole bunch of witchcraft books and going home and just dove deeper I didn't listen. And if I could go back and find that guy and tell him you were right and I'm sorry, I think about that every day. But you start off thinking, oh, this is love and light. This is manifestation. This is Mother Nature. And the deeper you get into it, the angrier you get. the angrier you get at God, the further you get from God, and it spirals.
Those chance encounters, those are always so mysterious to me. I mean, obviously God works in mysterious ways, so maybe that's a huge element of it. But isn't it interesting how, and I guess reflecting on it too, there have been times when God has said to me, I want you to pray for this person, like go to them and pray for them. And it's like, I'm in the middle of Chicken Shack, just trying to get some chicken, and, and so like, there's these encounters that we have, like you're talking about, where maybe that gentleman, literally God was like, go tell her to return to me. Go tell her to come back to me. Go tell her I miss her. Go tell her I love her. Go tell her she's still my daughter. Like, go tell her these things. And that guy's like, sure. Okay. Like, isn't it? It's so amazing how God works. You know what I mean? It's so amazing how God, not only that God works, the ways that God works, but like, it just again reminds me too of, I'm so thankful for the obedience of his believers, of his followers. You know what I mean? Like when people are walking in obedience, things change. And, I really love that. I wanted to ask about, I know you said you were doing like some money spells, and I'm curious because when you do a money spell and you said you're bringing in a lot of money, is it because you just work more shifts, or like were people giving you money, or did you open your front door and on your porch is like $100 bill, or like how is the money coming to you?
People, it was crazy because it was like people would just give me money. Money would just turn up. I would find money on the ground. I didn't really have to go into, I ended up marrying my son's father, and he worked and paid all the bills and took care of everything. It was just, and my parents, they just, I was just taken care of, and I didn't have anything to worry about. I didn't really have to work much or do anything for it. It was just something that would just constantly happen for me. And it was so strange because it's bizarre the way that Satan will do all of these things and put you in a position where you just don't even feel like questioning it. You just let it happen. And you just think, and you don't think, I didn't even think at the time that I was working with Satan. I didn't know. I thought that I was just some magical, powerful witch just making it happen. And I had no idea. And, it was constantly being gifted to me. I would find a good new job, or it would come to me in many different ways. And I never had to worry about, not the same way that I never have to worry about finances now that they're in God's hands, but I never had to worry about where my money was coming from. Everything was just, the devil will spoil you a little bit.
When you were doing the money spell, so I guess I am not familiar with witchcraft on an intimate, personal level. It's nothing I've ever practiced myself. But was it like you did the spell one time, or did you have to continually do the spell? And to do the spell, did you have to use like certain, materials or certain things every single time, or did it change? Or, what was that? What was that like? Like at a certain time, did people stop giving you money and you're like, oh, gotta charge the spell up again, or, gotta perform this ritual again, or yeah.
Yeah, it
Is that
was,
what it was?
it was. It's like currency. I'm spending my time focusing on this specific crystal that I need for whatever. I'm spending all of my time focused on the money and it's a loop, it's a rotating door. The money that was coming in, I'm spending it on witchcraft supplies to do more spells, to get more money. And it becomes a rotating door that you feel like you don't even see that it's happening, that you're, it's counterproductive. You're not doing anything. And So he tricks you. He makes you think, oh, look, you got all of this extra money now because your spell worked, you powerful witch. And then you turn around and all that money is not actually yours, and you hand it right back to get more witchcraft supplies, to do more spells, and I'm doing all of this instead of spending time with, as compared to when I was younger, I was spending all of my time with Jesus and with God and in my Bible, and not angry and not control issues, and not, it sends you in a whole, it snowballs quick, and you don't even realize it's happening.
Well, and then the other thing I was wondering too is you had talked about that you had transitioned from paganism specifically into more witchcraft. So is the transition there less worshiping nature and more worshiping, I don't know, self? Or did you have like a deity that you would call on specifically, or that you would worship specifically or work with?
Deities, entities, it's wild the way that it developed. It started off with, I was a 19, 20-year-old girl getting into witchcraft. I thought it would be cool to worship Hecate. I thought it would be good to, worship Lilith. I thought that it would be good to do, because you start to learn, because I read a lot of books, you start to learn that these particular entities are over particular things, that whatever you're wanting. I want money, go to this specific god. You want love, go to this specific goddess. You want protection, go to Hecate. You want revenge. It grows. It turns from innocent things to developing into, this person wronged me, I'm going to hex them. This person did this, and I need revenge. And it starts to turn into, so then you get more and more into darker entities. As that developed over the years, I started to learn that all of these entities were just demons. And then you start to see the variety of different demons that you're, dealing with. And it's not actually these entities and these beings that you thought you were talking to.
What does that transition look like? Like, when did you recognize that what you were calling on were demonic entities?
That goes into some depth. Okay, so I've mentioned a couple of times my son's father, and he's a big part of my testimony. He's very important, and he's a big, a big deal as far as all of this goes. I would not have seen or realized the things that I did if it weren't for him. But he was an atheist. He and I grew up together. When I was younger, rewind it just a little bit. When I was about 12 years old, when I first moved to my new school and did all this and that, he and I grew up together. He was in my class. He was in my school. He was my classmate. He was my friend. He was my crush, all that stuff. And I was still Christian at this point in time. And I had learned and found out that he was atheist. I was about 12. He was about 13, we'll say. And I found out that he was atheist. And at first I didn't really know what that meant. What's an atheist? And he said, it means I don't believe in God. I don't believe in anything. And he explained what it meant to me, which he was growing up in a household with an incredibly extreme Christian mother and an atheist father that practiced witchcraft. So he had a lot going on, but he was atheist. So I remember I had gone home and I told my mom that I found out that the boy at school that I like is an atheist. He doesn't believe in God. And my mom said, well, what we have to do is pray for him. We just pray for him. So she taught me how to pray for him and pray for him and stuff. So what I had done is I had taken my bandana. It was a SpongeBob SquarePants bandana. And I prayed over it and I said, God, please, I want him to know you. I want him to see you. I want him to know you. I prayed over him, and I left it in his locker with my prayer on it and stuff. And years later down the road, when I got into the witchcraft, and I did a witchcraft spell, I hadn't seen him or talked to him in years. We had left high school. He dropped out. I graduated early. It had been half a decade since I'd seen him or talked to him. And I did a witchcraft spell to bring me my husband. I wanted a husband. I wanted to get married. He immediately came back into my life, like right after that. We started he messaged me on Facebook and found me on Facebook. And I was like, oh, my spell worked, you know. So he's still an atheist. He's supportive. He's supportive of my witchcraft and things like that, but he's atheist. So we're already off to a bad start. We got married almost immediately. He moved in with me within the same week that we were dating. And we got married, engaged within like 3 months.
Wow.
He had it seemed innocent enough at first, me doing the witchcraft and him having a drinking problem. Spirits, as they call it. They call it spirits because it opens you up to. So bad combination. Bad combination. He's drinking and opening himself up to all of these demonic forces, and I'm calling in and summoning in the demonic forces. It was crazy. So as things developed, something had happened, and I can't really fully remember what. I went through a lot of trauma with that man. Once those entities started to fully take over our lives, it was like everything just kind of blacked out for me. I don't remember a lot of things that happened. I don't remember being in control of myself. I did all of the witchcraft to gain control, and that was exactly everything I had lost. I completely lost control. I blanked out. Something else had me for a long time. I know that I have bits and pieces of memories of me lying, me being angry, me being aggressive and violent, stealing, a plethora of things about me. There's so many people in my life that I owe apologies to just because I was a terrible person. I became a terrible person, but it wasn't me. So when I was going through all of that stuff, everything just kind of blanked out for me. And then I wanted to have something happen, because there was always that rope. There was always that rope that God had around my waist. Jesus never let me go. I would see him everywhere. Even if I got angry, because it was the entities that had a hold of me that would get angry, not me. Because I remember my spirit was still very in there going, please help me. Please get me out of here. What's happening? You know, it's going to make me cry. But I remember, like, I would see Jesus come on the TV, or I would see a book or a Bible that had Jesus, or I would see something that would remind me of him. And that little part of me that was still in there would say, please get me out of here. So something happened, and I decided I wanted to be a mom. I was very lonely in my marriage. My husband had gone off the rails. His drinking got so bad, out of control. He was having like bouts of psychosis. He started doing drugs. And he just he lost himself. And, something in me, I didn't think that it was going to fix our marriage. I didn't want to have a baby to fix my marriage or do any of that. It's just something in me. My son was always supposed to be, but there was something in me that was, I'm lonely. I want to be a mom. I knew that something in me knew he wasn't going to be a part of it or be involved. And I would need something to give me a reason to live. Because what God was fixing to do, because he heard me say, please, I've had enough. Get me out of here. So he was fixing to yank that rope and pull me back the other way. But what I had to do was go through that long, dark tunnel I had made over the last decade. I had to go backwards the other way through it. So God knew, you're going to have something to keep you holding on, because this is going to be hard. So I wanted to have a baby. I was still an atheist. I still had, I guess agnostic is more of what I was leaning more towards, because I was like, I know that there's something. I've experienced all of these paranormal experiences. I know that there's something. But I was still not quite there. I went through 4 years of infertility, fertility issues. My husband and I had tried to have a baby for about 4 years. And we presented as if we had the most perfect marriage. We had the best marriage and everything was great and everything was fine, but there was no God in our marriage. None. It was completely consumed by the devil at this point. When we had got married and when he tried to marry us under God, I held my hand up and I said, can we not? So it was, we didn't have any protection over our marriage. So I couldn't get pregnant. God wasn't going to let me have a baby in that situation. After that point, I had finally reached, I can't take this anymore. I want to have a baby so bad. I can't stand it. I fell to my knees in the bathroom floor and I said, God, please, if you're real, if you're there, please, I want to have a baby. I want to be a mom more than anything in this world, please. That's all I want. If you're real, if you can hear me, that's all I want. That next month, I got pregnant with my son after 4 years. So when my son was about a month old, his daddy snapped. He couldn't do it anymore. He pulled a gun on us. The demons completely took over. I started at this point to see the demons, physically see them. His face would shapeshift. His voice would change. His body would change. His muscles would bulge or shrink. He would take on the appearance of the entities that were on him or in him. And I started to have reflected back at me all of the demons I had accumulated in witchcraft for all those years that I let come into my life and my home and my family. Immediately knew I have got to protect my baby from this. So he had to go on his own way. He's still alive. He's still out in the world functioning as best as he can. I don't really know I still pray for him every day. But he has not been allowed to come around me and my son. And he has even stated himself, do you not see whatever it is you have around you? It won't let me come home right now. He's said that to me many times. And I always think surrounded by God's angels, wingtip to wingtip, shoulder to shoulder. So that won't let him through as long as he has those entities on him that want to cause me and my son harm. So I would start to see in him, every time he would try to come back around, I would see it. There was a point in time we were standing out in the parking lot of a hotel that he was staying in. And I watched his eyes go black. I'm completely sober for all of this, by the way. And I see his eyes go completely black, and he gets bigger in size, like taller. And his face changed, and he held his arms out, and his voice changed to something that was not human sounding. And he said, "Can't you see that I'm an angel? You can't stop me." I would, stuff like that would happen. And then God would pull me out of the situation. I don't know how I got home safe. I don't know how I got away. I don't know what happened. There would be times he would have me trapped in the car, and the demons would be, which I try to separate intense, like I make it a big deal to separate my husband and the man that I married, which he's my ex-husband now. But the man that I married and loved, and I separate that from the demonic beings. It's two completely different things. I would say to him a lot, I'm talking to my husband, not you, when stuff would come out of him. And there would be times I would be trapped in the car with him. I would be trapped in a house with him. I would be out in a parking lot with him, something, and a fight would be going down. The demons would be coming out, and then all of a sudden I'm home safe, and I don't remember how I got there. So it started gradually, but it turned into like I was able to actually see that I'm working with demons, not Hecate.
Yeah. So you're recognizing that the things that you're calling on for your own spell work as they're kind of manifesting themselves, in your husband, you're recognizing them maybe for what they are. Like when they're communicating to you, is it something specific? Is it like the same message, or is it I mean, like ultimately, I think the challenge is for me, not the challenge for me, but like the challenge for like the thought process is like, what does it benefit the demon to manifest in your husband, other than to drive you back to Christ? You know what I mean? Hopefully to drive you back to Christ. But I mean, maybe in their mind, that's not what it was, but like, ultimately it kind of got turned back around on them. You know what I mean? Almost like, do you think that they were manifesting in your husband for any specific reason? Like, was it to keep you in fear, or to, keep you trapped in the relationship, or, I don't know. Like, what do you think?
What I have, my theory of it, because I fully have not been able to understand exactly why these entities, these demons, pick on me the way they do, or come at me the way that they do. They knew that one of the things was I made my husband an idol. I made him an idol. I had him above God, above all else. I didn't know God like I do now then. I didn't have a relationship with Jesus, and I made him the center of everything. So that was one thing that come back to bite me. And then another thing is they want me to not see worth in myself. They don't want me to know my identity in Christ. And they always try to push me towards self-loathing, and suicide, and just, they want to take me out. That's what the devil is sent to steal, kill, and destroy. And what his goal is they wanted to take me out before I found Christ so I would go to hell. They wanted my soul. That's the only thing I can gather from it, because I noticed I dated one other man after my husband left, and I mostly just keep to myself. I don't date. I don't have any interest in getting involved in any of that. The only man I need in my life is Jesus right now. But I dated one man since all of this happened, and he came into my life shortly after, like maybe a year or so after my husband left us. He abandoned us. And after he left, about a year or so later, I met another man that I had that same attraction to, because I don't really I don't really do that. Like, I don't date. I don't take attraction to people. I just don't worry about it. And I was also like incredibly traumatized from my husband, so I didn't have any interest, but I still had that draw to this man. And it was like a dependence. It feels like a dependence on him. And I realized after a while, because he would say the same things, get the same look in his eye, do the same things as my ex-husband would do when he was under the influence of these entities. And I started to realize, same demon, different body. And it's trying to do the same thing to me that you were doing before. So my husband had removed himself from the environment and got him away from us because he couldn't stop attacking me, whether that have been psychologically, physically, or otherwise. He couldn't stop. So he removed himself. So the entity couldn't harm me anymore through him. So he came to me in a different body. And the beings that I believe it is, because like how I said, I worshipped Hecate. It's actually the demon Jezebel and the spirit of Leviathan is what I had encountered. And so they just went into a different body and came back and tried again, except this time, the more I grew in Christ and the more I knew Christ, the less power that they had. And the less power that they have, the angrier they get, but they can't do anything, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. It definitely makes sense. I'm curious if you could describe for me the Jezebel spirit or the Leviathan spirit. Like, could you describe for me either like what, first of all, I guess, could you describe for me like what you would say that those are, and then how they manifested themselves either in you or in your ex-husband or the person you dated after your ex-husband?
The Jezebel spirit is lust. And lust develops into very many horrible things. She comes to you through pornography addiction, sex addiction. She causes a lot of this. There was a brief period in time, and if he were to ever see this, I apologize in advance, but nothing is, a secret. The Jezebel spirit had my ex-husband dressing in drag, getting involved in prostitution, just things of that nature, porn addiction, he started to shapeshift into a woman as the best as he could, and he would look like his mother. He would put on wigs and makeup, and it would actually, he would physically form to look more feminine, and that's when I would see her. And there was at one point that I had called her out by name because I had started doing my research. It got me diving into what are these things? What is this that I'm seeing and experiencing? Because I know I'm not crazy. People try to tell you that you're just crazy, but I knew that I wasn't. So I went into my own research and started to learn things. So then when I called her out by name and I looked at him and I said, "It's the spirit of Jezebel," he smirked at, his face changed and she smiled at me. And I knew. And then the spirit of Leviathan, who works very closely with Jezebel, they work together, is like narcissism, violence, rage, narcissistic behaviors, acts like a victim, manipulative, just very, the narcissism is such an intense, form of abuse. And the way that they think and act is so bizarre and difficult to explain, but that's what he is. He causes narcissism, No empathy, absolutely no empathy, no, a very, very sociopathic, like very intent to cause like violent harm and aggression.
Yeah. Yeah. So after you divorce your husband and it, it seems like, and to use what you're saying, it kind of seems like God is, kind of pulling that rope, like pulling you back, pulling you back, pulling you back. I guess, Kaylee, if someone were to come to church with a background like yours, or even having experiences like with their spouse where, they're encountering their spouse is effectively like, shifting form, or, kind of, changing in front of them, what would your hope be that the church would respond? Like, how should the church respond to a person in that situation?
Don't treat them like they're crazy, and don't. I have had experience I got very blessed with my church because there's other like-minded people there with similar experiences and stuff. So they can look at me and know, okay, she's not crazy. We know that this is, because spiritual warfare is very real and it's everywhere. And it's very important to remember that, because for some reason, there's a lot of Christians and church people who have lost touch with God. Tells us about these things. Jesus tells us about these things, that demons are very real, that, the Satan, the enemy, he's very real. And it's not going to always just be something that can be physically proven, logically proven. There's not, human logic does not compare to the things that God can do, and the things that God has created. Like, we don't have the ability to put logic on all of it and process all of it. So you have to be open-minded and be aware that this stuff is very real. There's a connection between two things can be true. There's a connection between mental illnesses and struggles, and schizophrenia, and bipolar disorder, or suicidal thoughts, or just anything, the whole thing. Two things can be real. It's a neurological issue, or a issue, in the mind, body, and the spirit. It's all of it. And you can't just, turn someone away like they're crazy when they're having these experiences, because you're kind of just handing them right back to, you're not helping them. You got to remember, Jesus might be sending that person to you for help.
It's so important that we are receptive to hearing the voice of God. I love when Jesus says, "My sheep know my voice," and I agree. I agree with what you're saying, that it's so important that the church, when someone comes in spiritual sickness, right, that they would receive them by hearing the voice of Jesus, by recognizing, like, okay, this is how we should interact with this person. This is how we should, approach this situation. And, certainly I hope that we live our lives that way, but certainly as the body of Christ, as believers, as churchgoers, and I'm very thankful to hear that your church has those who've kind of gone through similar experiences where they're like, oh, yeah, no, that's totally a thing that could happen, and let's pray about it. Let's pray against it, or let's, cast it out in Jesus' authority, right? Like that's amazing. And I think it comes down to hearing the voice of Jesus, recognizing spiritual sickness for what it is. I mean, even Jesus said, nobody who's well goes to the doctor, but
Right.
those who are sick, right? And so for those who are spiritually suffering, right, they should go to the spiritual hospital. And if the church is not the spiritual hospital, then I don't know what is. So
Yeah.
I appreciate I appreciate the wisdom there with that response. Kaylee, I appreciate your willingness to share your testimony, to come on to Martyria. I'm very excited to share out what, your story, right? That ultimately is for God's glory and for his kingdom's sake. If anybody is experiencing anything like you've experienced, or maybe they have some more questions for you, is there anywhere that they can reach out to you online?
Always come find me on my TikTok. And I think that it's gingerbread7711. I think so, but I'm sure I'll be tagged in it. And another important thing that I do want to make sure that I tell everybody to always remember this. When you are experiencing, like, say, a narcissistic partner or someone who struggles with like these kinds of things, addiction, whether it be drinking, drugs, whatever it is that it's really important for Christ followers to remember to, and it's hard to do it, separate the person and their soul and their spirit and who they are. The person that Jesus died on the cross for, separate that person from the entities, from the demons. It's hard to do that, especially when we try to put logic on everything and don't want to see the spiritual warfare of stuff. But I have had to learn the hard way. Always separate my ex-husband, my son's father. I won't say my ex-husband. He's my son's father, my son's dad. That person was my person. I love that man. That's the man that gave me my child. That was my best friend. We had good things together. And the demons that got a hold of him, and I hold my side accountable for that, the demons that got a hold of him are two separate things. So I'm not angry at him. I'm angry at the demons. And I'm angry at the devil and his demons. So a lot of people have a big struggle with separating that. Like, it's hard to love somebody in their sin. And, it even says in the Bible, take the plank out of your own eye, right? That's hard to do, but you have to know how to, and it's a process and it's difficult to do, but you have to teach yourself. This person is the person that I love. This is the person that God created and Jesus died on the cross for. And these are entities inflicting this person. And you pray for them. Because what those entities want is for you to hate that person, for you to not have forgiveness for that person, because then that's how the demons get you and that person. When they set that seed of unforgiveness in your heart and you can't realize or see the difference and pray for them, and you just hold resentment, anger, hatred, whatever else, then it's not helping anything.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Kaylee, I really do appreciate your time and for coming on to Martyria, sharing your testimony and also the wisdom that comes along with your testimony. Yeah, thank you so much, and I hope you have a blessed and restful rest of your day.
Thank you so much. You too. I really enjoyed it. Thank you for spending this time with me and letting me tell my testimony and my story. I appreciate it a lot.